This is the East Idaho Prepcast on IdahoSports.com.
That's right. Welcome in another edition of the East Idaho Prepcast on IdahoSports.com. My name is Brandon Baney, and this guy is Sean Kane. Sean, what's up?
Hey, what's going on, Brandon? Not too much, just getting through the work week one day at a time.
Yeah.
We're at the top of the mountain, but only halfway there. So
yes, and we were joking before we popped on as we were getting everything all set up, and you were joining the chat room. So friendly reminder: audio only version of this podcast at IdahoSports.com or wherever you download your podcasts. Video version as well at the IdahoSports.com YouTube channel or Facebook page. So we have this video chat room we use to record each week. And as you popped on, I was in the middle of a pretty big yawn there. Were you counting the seconds on how long my yawn was?
Hey, we made it. We made it to air. I didn't know if we would, if you needed a nap or I needed to yell real loud. I don't know, but you made it. It wasn't too bad. Yeah, it is Wednesday.
Yeah, so it was touch and go there for a moment, for sure. So we're recording this Wednesday night, September 28th. You'll be hearing this probably at some point on Thursday, September 29th. So let's get right to it. The postseason has begun. Yes, postseason golf started on Monday this week. There were a couple of district tournaments up in District 6. We had the 5A, District 5 and 6 district golf tournament at Teton Lakes Golf Course in Rexburg. And then we had the Class 4A District 6 district tournament at Sage Lakes Golf Course in Idaho Falls. Are you a golfer, Sean? Have you golfed either of those courses before?
I have not. I am the worst. I spend a good portion of my summer at a country club and I do not golf. So I take a lot of flack for that. I am terrible, but I can play some tennis. I have one country club sport down, but no, I haven't been there. I've seen a couple of these courses, and I mean, that's why they moved it to the fall, right? The weather we've had, how nice it is, and it's just got to be a real treat to be golfing in this weather. I know it'd be a real treat to be playing tennis in this weather. So yeah.
Well, careful what you wish for. If tennis moves to the fall, then we're really talking about a fully loaded fall sports calendar. It's already pretty overloaded as is. So yeah, district. Let's start with the district golf competition for the 5A schools. Districts 5 and 6, just a 4-team affair now, right? With Madison, Highland, Thunder Ridge, and Rigby. So this took place on Monday up at Teton Lakes Golf Course in Rexburg. On the boys' side, Madison wins the team title with a total score of 317. Highland was second at 326. I'm not a math major, but I think that's 9 strokes back of Madison. So that was pretty impressive. And then Madison also had the top individual finisher in Ashton MacArthur. He got a 64. Justin Anderson of Thunder Ridge was second at 75, and then Sean Floyd of Highland took third. He also shot 75. Justin Anderson had such a great regular season for Thunder Ridge. I kind of thought he was the favorite coming in, but way to go, Ashton MacArthur of Madison.
Yeah, I talked to Thunder Ridge AD Travis Hobson about the tournament. He's a former golf coach, so he happened to be up there watching, the golf course. Real tough job.
Yeah.
And yeah, you thought the team performed real well, and Justin Anderson had come in pretty hot as far as golfers, and but that's golf, man. Just you never know. You kind of have your top people, and whatever pans out at that day at that time it's kind of up in the air sometimes, literally.
It really is. It's very hard to win, because Justin's won, several individual tournaments throughout the regular season. It's hard to win every single time. It doesn't ever happen. So, the good thing would be, I guess, for Thunder Ridge and for Justin Anderson is maybe, okay, you got the bad performance out of the way prior to state, which is next week. So I'm sure he will be loaded up. And, on the same side, Ashton MacArthur of Madison now, has a little wind in his sails as he goes into the state competition next week.
Yeah, I mean, and 75 is not a bad score at all. I mean, I know a lot of guys that would love to have that when they're out there in the weekend, but 64 is great score, and that's it's golf's a lot of pressure. It's individual, so it's kind of how's he going to take it. He's going to take it. as a propeller for himself, or now are you going to feel that pressure? Like, I shot really well, how do I put up another great performance? I mean, golf is tough. You're out there by yourself. There's no coaching. It's kind of a testament to those athletes when they get out there and can have those performances day in and day out, because you're alone on the island.
Definitely. And then as we, look ahead to state, none of the other 5A districts have had their district tournaments. District 3 will be today, actually. So, I mean, they were competing today. We don't know how that went. And then District 1 and 2 up north is tomorrow. But generally, the Boise schools, like most things, have done really well at state the past couple of years. And so we'll see if maybe Madison can knock somebody off, or at least get a top 3 finish next week. For boys golf. For girls golf, Highland ran roughshod. I mean, 384 as a team. Thunder Ridge was second at 391. So that is 7 strokes back of Highland as a team. But Highland, it was a strength in numbers. They didn't have the individual medalist. That was Madison. So a clean sweep for the Bobcats on the boys' side. Ashton MacArthur, the top finisher on the girls' side, was Megan Quinton. She shot a 76. Which is only 1 stroke off of Justin Anderson. Now, I think they tee off from different spots, but it's the same course. You got to play the same holes, essentially. And then Highland had a tie for second and third. Kaylee McMahon and Megan Merrill each shot a 91. So Highland used more of a strength in numbers to carry them to the title.
And that's what Highland's done throughout the years. It wasn't too long ago Highland was winning state golf titles. They had some really good individuals, but their team shot really, really well. Like, they just had a bunch of great girls playing, and you have one person have a great day and everyone else just kind of keeps their just normal average. You're in good shape to compete, and that's what Highland did at this districts.
Yeah, definitely. Highland, let's see. Pretty recently, 2015, 2017 state championships for Highland. So that's 2 in the last, 9+ years, whatever it is, 8+ years. So yeah, Highland has a pretty good golf tradition, to be sure. And then when we look at on the girls' side for golf as well, the team title again usually comes from those Boise schools. I know up north they have a couple of outstanding individuals, but not enough maybe to carry a team to a title. So we'll just have to see how Highland stacks up at state next week. 4A golf also took place on Monday. District 6, the High Country Conference. This was at Sage Lakes Golf Course in Idaho Falls. Clean sweep for Skyline. They won the boys title. They won the girls title. Let's start with the boys. They finished pretty far ahead of Shelley. Shelley ended up taking second place. And Skyline also had the individual medalist in Luke Peterson. He shot a 67, which is pretty good. This was really close, though. Second place was Parker Christensen of Blackfoot. He had a 68. So Peterson only won by 1 stroke over Christensen for second place. And then, it was even closer than that. So you had Luke Peterson win at 67 from Skyline. Parker Christensen from Blackfoot was second at 68. And then Nate Nelson of Shelley and Alex Louie of Idaho Falls tied for third. They had 69s. So that, 2 strokes separated first from fourth place. What a finish that must have been.
Yeah, it's one of those like Sunday finishes where everyone's tuning in to see. And I guess luckily it didn't come down to a tie. Or maybe, it would have been kind of neat. Don't they go by like what your best hole was or have a playoff, correct?
Yeah, sometimes they'll do a what's called a card off, where they'll randomly pick a hole, like, okay, hole 9, who had the better score on the card, and you look that way. But yeah, it was
it could have ended up that, and you're probably glad that it didn't, but yeah, very close.
Yes. So and look at the diversity, right? The top 4 from 4 different schools: Skyline, Blackfoot, Idaho Falls, Shelley. So that, I think, speaks well to the strength of the conference. Shelley was a team I kind of had my eye on, and Nate Nelson in particular. He plays football for Shelley as well. But he's been a great golfer in past spring seasons. So he was kind of the guy I was looking at for this golf field coming in. He ends up, 2 strokes off of first place. And Skyline as a team, we'll see how they stack up. Bishop Kelly, of course, is so difficult, like they are in so many things in 4A athletics. I would say BK probably the favorite going in, but we'll see how Skyline does over there at State, and really Shelley as well. I think Shelley's got a puncher's chance as well.
And then you always got to think, Magic Valley. They always have Twin Falls, Canyon Ridge. Those are always really competitive golf teams.
Definitely. And they will compete on Monday at the Rupert Country Club, as will District 5's 3-team triumvirate of Preston, Pocatello, and Century. They'll compete on Monday as well at the Riverside Golf Course in Pocatello. So that should be a fun competition as well.
Yeah. They're pretty excited to get going. Like we were talking about before, is we couldn't even believe district something already happened. And so I was frantically trying to get a hold of some coaches, and Ryan Frost, who's the assistant golf coach and basketball coach for Century, was like, he's like, yeah, they already had it. And then he said they're going Monday, but they're pretty excited. And there's some good golfers in there, and that'll be an exciting kind of group. You only have 3 teams. So like we said, anything can really happen over the course of play there.
Yeah, and it'll be a lot of fun to track that on Monday, and maybe we can talk about that and maybe do a little state golf preview. We're kind of doing a quasi state golf preview here on this week's show, but we'll talk golf next week as well. Girls side for the High Country Conference, District 6, Class 4A, Skyline clean sweep. They shot 344. Shelley took second at 379. I didn't do the math, Sean, so I'm going to pull out the calculator here and figure out real quick how many strokes the margin of victory was for Skyline. 379 minus 344, 35 strokes. Skyline won the title by. That's pretty good.
Pretty convincing by Skyline, the Skyline ladies there.
Yeah. Haley Cole is your individual medalist. What a fantastic season she has had. She's got a couple of regular season victories under her belt as well. She won the title at 68. And just like the team title, this was kind of a runaway. Mallory Hyam finished second at 77 from Shelley. And then Ellie Billings of Hillcrest was third at 81. So this one wasn't quite as close as the boys. This was more of a lopsided affair.
Yeah, and sometimes when that happens, just the team that has the person that shoots the best is really in the best position, because sometimes it can just go downhill quickly, and the team that has a top 3 competitor, they're usually just in the hunt. So that's where Skyline was there.
Yeah, so congratulations to the Lady Grays. And again, going into state, Bishop Kelly looks very tough, in Twin Falls has had a really nice season in girls golf as well. Ava Schroeder, individually for Twin Falls, has been one of the better golfers that I've seen this year. So good luck to Haley Cole and the Skyline Grizz at state next week. All right, let's shift the conversation now to football, where I feel like I try to vary up, what we're going to, the order of what we're going to talk about things, but inevitably we always start the discussion with West Side, the West Side Pirates in football. And, in recent episodes, it was because, they were on this 35-game winning streak. Well, that finally came to an end on Friday night against Bear Lake. This is a team that I've been high on all year long. Bear Lake, they've been in my top 5. I vote in the media poll every week for football, and Bear Lake has been in my top 5 since the start of the year. They've never left my top 5. I'm still flabbergasted that 2 people voted West Side ahead of Bear Lake in the poll, even though
the recent one, right?
Yes, the other one
out this week.
Yeah. I'm like, what are we doing, guys and gals? Did you not see that Bear Lake beat West Side? So I moved West Side down to 3 in my poll. I have Bear Lake at 2, North Fremont at 1. So 3 teams from East Idaho in my top 5. In fact, I've got Firth in the top 5 as well. So 4 of the top 5 slots in my personal poll are from East Idaho. But what a wild game this was. Bear Lake taking on West Side, and coming into the season, Bear Lake had been named the preseason favorite in the coaches poll, and so that's what put me on their radar initially, and it really stood up. This game went down to overtime. Bear Lake gets the win, 28-27. This was a wild game, Sean. First of all, Bear Lake raced out to a 20-7 lead. Tayson Neal threw touchdown passes to Rhett Lloyd and your favorite guy, Brady Shaw, and then he returned an interception 40 yards. Yeah, he took a pick 6 back 40 yards for a touchdown as well. Tayson Neal did. So, Bear Lake's up 20-7, and you're thinking, oh my gosh, is this going to be a runaway? But, West Side remained calm, cool, and collected like they usually do.
Yeah, and just like that, Yeah, I watched this game back on film, and it's 7-20 in the third, and you just are getting this feeling like, man, it's Bear Lake's game. And then just like 35 times before, some Brown throws a 48-yard pass to Garrett Robinson, and they're right back in it. They score there. The Bear Lake blocks the PAT, and they score again, and then it's 20-20, and Bear Lake missed extra point too. That was pretty big. That could have won the game too. And then, and what I kind of thought was the big play of the game was Bear Lake's down, right? And Moser scores on a sweep in overtime. Oh, I'm getting ahead of myself. There's too much happening.
No.
There's too much going on in the game.
You're good. Let's. Okay, so just to get people up to speed in regulation, so West Side's down 20-7 in the third. They get that big touchdown pass from Eli Brown to Garrett Robinson to bring them to within 20-14. And you're right, Bear Lake had missed an extra point previously along the way somewhere. So West Side only down 6. A touchdown and an extra point would give West Side the lead. And wouldn't you know it, in the fourth quarter, Parker Moser scores on a touchdown run, brings it to 20-20. West Side's lining up for the extra point and the possible lead. Bear Lake blocks it. And so that basically sends the game to overtime, tied at 20-all. West Side gets the ball first, and then Parker Moser scores on a touchdown run, right?
Yeah, he on a sweep, 4th and 1, he makes it 27-20 West Side. And then the guy who was, kind of the whole team, Taysom Neal, runs it 3 yards for a touchdown. And then Bear Lake goes for 2, which they're going for the win or the loss. And Neal, again, a nice slant to Beersford for the 2-point conversion on homecoming. Bear Lake wins. It was just wild. There was also a 4th down where they had to measure, and the announcer called it paper thin. I thought it was so fun. You could have put a piece of paper in between the marker and how that 4th down was, or West Side was in scoring position to maybe go ahead before it went into overtime. But yeah, the game had everything: passes, interceptions, blocked kicks, and then finally Taysom Neal has just had an unreal game. And what a win for Bear Lake.
Yeah, that happened in the NFL a couple of years ago where an official had to pull out an index card. And he's like, yeah, all officials carry an index card for those really tight measurements. And it's like, nobody knew this was a rule until, it just happened. But yeah, it was a wild game that had it all, right? Comeback from West Side, the blocked PAT by Bear Lake, the overtime period, the 2-point conversion going for the win, and a gutsy call to be sure. And so 28-27, I would love for these teams to rematch in the playoffs. They met twice last year. They met in the regular season and then in the semifinals as well. I would love that because this was a pretty appetizing, appetizer, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, you've definitely got a collision course, I think, right? You got West Side, you've got Bear Lake, you've got Firth, and then North Fremont, right? You've got 4 teams that are definitely on a collision course, I think, in the playoffs.
Yeah, and so North Fremont gets a big win over West Jefferson, 60-22. So they're 1-0 in nuclear conference play. Carson Packer ran for 241 yards and 5 touchdowns. North Fremont actually was my preseason number 1 team in my media poll I filled out. I didn't have West Side in my top 5, and that was a mistake. I bought into the hype of West Side kind of saying, oh yeah, we're going to be down. And anyways, so North Fremont looks good. I think 2A football, either 2A or 4A, Sean, and you tell me if I'm wrong. I think those are the most wide open classifications where, and we'll talk about class 4A football right after we wrap up our 2A conversation. But in 2A, you've got West Side, Bear Lake, Firth, North Fremont. Melba looks really good from, the western part of the state. Kellogg up north has been running roughshod through people. They've got the Luna twins that are just making people go bonkers up there. And even, like Declo is always a solid team you can never count out. So I really think 2A football is wide open, and I can't wait for the postseason to get here because, and even, Aberdeen, we're kind of sliding Aberdeen a little bit here, but the Tigers are also playing really well and staying healthy. So, I mean, I think 2A is pretty open right now.
Yeah, you're going to have, and I think last year it was that way too. Pretty much every first round was just a stellar matchup. You're just not going to have a lot of, bad kind of matchups. I think whoever you get or however that pans out, I mean, you're just going to have to show up and be like, this is the championship game, and the next game is the champion, until you actually get there. Every game is probably going to have that feel with kind of the powerhouses that are floating around in the 2A football this year.
Definitely. And so now this week we kind of settle back into kind of maybe the teams that are favored are heavily favored, right? West Side will play Soda Springs. You've got Aberdeen taking on Malad. So it's really shaping up to be this 3-team race here between Aberdeen and West Side and Bear Lake. I feel pretty confident saying all three will get into the playoffs. Aberdeen especially kind of holds all the cards in front of them now because they finished the year with just a gauntlet. So they'll play Malad this Friday night. Then they host North Fremont in a non-conference game on the 7th of October. And then they have back-to-back road games at West Side on the 14th, at Bear Lake on the 21st. And yet, if Aberdeen can run the table, hey,
we're definitely we're talking about them for sure, right? I mean, that's the gauntlet: Malad, North Fremont, West Side, Bear Lake, in East Idaho, or and maybe even the state. If they get out of there with a couple wins, I mean, they're in good shape.
Yeah, and Aberdeen's already beaten Declo, who I mentioned in that previous conversation, 18-12 this year. They lost their lone loss. They're 3-1. Their lone loss came to South Fremont by a touchdown, and South Fremont just suffered their first loss 2 weeks ago. So, this is an Aberdeen team that as long as they can stay healthy, and that's what derailed them last year because they had a lot of this same promise last year, but injuries caught up to them. Boy, if they can stay healthy, that's going to be a fantastic race to watch as well. All right, let's jump up to 4A football. The big story coming in was the Emotion Bowl, right? Saturday, 4 o'clock kickoff at Ravston Stadium between Idaho Falls and Skyline. Last year, the Tigers won the matchup, got to paint the goalposts orange, and Skyline said, yeah, we've had enough of that. And they win going away. Just a dominant win.
Yeah, Skyline 46, Idaho Falls 7. And talking to some coaches too, they feel like every time they see Skyline this year, they're better. Like every game, they're better. And a lot of people are like, this team's better than last year, which I don't think people want to hear that. If you're a 4A football team, you don't want to hear this team's better. But a lot of coaches, like every time we watch them on tape, they're better every game. And I think a lot of it has to do, we know they can pass the ball to Sadiq. We know they have lots of weapons, but their run game, I think, is just going to be what's going to be very important come playoff times. And I think sometimes kind of forget that in the flashiness of it. But their run game, if they're able to run the ball like that, 70 yards and a touchdown on just 9 carries, I mean, that just opens everything up and gives them that chance to throw it. And that's going to just be tough. Skylines is tough. They just look better every time I see them.
Yeah, I mean the Skyline offense is really built on 3 principles, and it's home runs to Kenyon Sadiq, it's those jet sweeps with Caden Taggart, and it's the between the tackles or right off tackle running of Abron Silverio. You mentioned it, Silverio, 70 yards and a touchdown on just 9 carries. I said this last year as I covered Skyline a lot through the playoffs, and I'll say it again this year. I think Abron Silverio is the X factor. He's the guy, he's the straw that really stirs the drink because Kenyon Sadiq, sometimes he's open, sometimes he's not. There's going to be times where he's double and triple covered. But if Silverio can run the ball behind a really good unheralded offensive line for Skyline, that to me is going to make them so difficult to defend. And so Silverio to me is the guy. If he's got it going, then Skyline's pretty much impossible to beat. But there's been times where the run game has struggled and it hasn't been there. And then they have to become more one-dimensional than they'd like to. And that's where they can run into some problems. But man, if Silverio's going, yeah, Skyline is almost impossible to beat.
Yeah. I mean, they're just that classic super balanced, right? They're just very balanced. They can run it. They got a couple good receivers. Their quarterback's very smart, and just that all-around balance, it just makes you just dangerous. And just that's what I see from them is just really, just kind of corny to say sometimes, but they're just super balanced in it shows up on Friday or Saturday like last week.
That's right. Occasionally we get those Saturday matchups in there as well. Also in the High Country Conference, it's shaping up to be a pretty interesting. Skyline is 2-0 in league play. Shelley is also 2-0. The Russets, of course, had that big win over Blackfoot Friday night. And then it's easy to have the letdown, right? You come out and win a game against Blackfoot. And now you're playing Bonneville. Well, there's no letdown here. Shelley earns the shutout win, 28-0. The scoring started on a 68-yard punt return for a touchdown by CJ Fielding. And then right before halftime, Nate Nelson, the golfer we were just talking about a little earlier, Nate Nelson throws a 19-yard touchdown pass to Caden Johnson. Shelley leads 14-0 at halftime. And from there, they took care of business. Shelley really challenged themselves in the non-conference portion of the schedule, right? They're 2-0 in league, but they're 2-3 overall. They had 3 losses to Star Valley, Wyoming, Sugar Salem, and then a game they could have won against Burley if Gatlin Bear hadn't made one of the most impressive catches I've seen in a while to win that game for Burley in the last minute. So I think people kind of forgot, Shelley started off 0-3 and kind of, okay, whatever, and they're not ready. I think this is a team that's got Final Four potential.
Yeah, we got to watch them a couple times last year live, and they're just a solid run, good defense. And I mean, it leads into what I'd call America's Game of the Week that we're doing on IdahoSports.com is Shelley versus Pocatello. And I'm sure we'll talk about Pocatello versus Hillcrest next. But yeah, that's a game I'm just real excited to see. I think you got 2 teams that kind of have been going up and down all year, and now they're meeting right now, kind of non-conference, kind of to see where you measure up.
Yeah, that's going to be a fantastic non-conference battle. You mentioned it. Pocatello goes and plays Hillcrest. The Knights get the win, 27-21. This was a tight game. We get to the fourth quarter, and Hillcrest is trailing. First of all, Pocatello led 21-13 at halftime. Hillcrest then outscores Pokey 13-0 in the second half. So good adjustments made by second-year Hillcrest coach Brennan Mossholder. But we get to the fourth quarter and Hillcrest is still down a score. And like John Elway was in the huddle, they go 95 yards down the field. They basically cap it off on, I don't know if it was 95 yards. It was a very long touchdown drive, though. It's capped off by a 2-yard touchdown run by Connor Payne, and they took so much time off the clock. Pokey got the ball back with like a minute left. And so we know Pocatello's got the offense certainly to come back, but Hillcrest gets a sack on 4th down. Pocatello turns it over, and Hillcrest gets a big non-conference win. So the Knights, and we talked about with the Max Preps rankings this year, determining some of the at-large slots into the playoffs, 16 of 24 Class 4A teams make the playoffs. And so for Hillcrest and their chances to be one of those 16 playoff teams, this was a huge win for them because they could finish 3rd or 4th in their conference and still make it in.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a signature win, I think, for Hillcrest. They went last year, they didn't win a game. They got the kids going, and you come in, you've got a Pocatello team that's been ranked in the top 5 throughout the year, and you beat them and do it with a very calculated drive at the end of the game. Yeah, it's kind of their signature win. They're in a tough division in that conference, and that win could be what propels them into the playoffs or just kind of propels the program moving forward. So I mean, congrats to their coaching staff and everyone just to kind of come back from where they were last year to now. I mean, it's night and day.
Yeah, so that was a huge win for Hillcrest, and again for Pocatello, trying to figure out life without starting quarterback Dre Contreras. I mean, it's undeniable that there's a difference with him in the lineup versus when he's not in the lineup. And, Pokey's got a good coaching staff. Coach Dave Spillett and all of his assistants are trying to figure out ways to scheme, whether it's Hunter May or Tavin Williams in at quarterback, try to scheme them ways because there's the supporting cast is still there, right? It's just that the guy getting everybody the ball has changed. And so for Pokey, now we kind of look at this game against Shelley, and I think this is a must-win game, not necessarily because I don't think they're in jeopardy of not making the playoffs, right? They're 2-3, but they, we still think they're a little bit ahead of Preston and Century in terms of their conference.
Yeah.
So, but they need a win for confidence to say, hey, we can win a game without Drake Contreras, because they haven't done it yet.
Yeah, they've, they beat Ridgeview and they beat Twin Falls, and Twin Falls I think is a pretty good team. Twin Falls was missing. They were all kind of like Pokey. They were missing some of their top players when they played Pokey. But yeah, and then you played Highland, and then you played Hillcrest. And yeah, I mean, you've kind of got to find where that offense is going to come from. You got Reichel Echo Hawk, and he had a tough time getting anything going against Hillcrest. 8 carries, only 16 yards. I mean, that's not numbers we're used to seeing from him. And but they're kind of one-dimensional. They know if they, the throwing, the passing game's not there, you're going to kind of zero in on him. So I think they've just got to, maybe if they don't win the game, just kind of figure a way to get the offense kind of going for 4 quarters. We've seen it work a few quarters, but it can kind of taper off. And I think if they can find to get that offense going 4 quarters, that's how they're going to win the game versus Shelley.
Definitely. So let's take a look at what's coming up this weekend. There's a lot of great matchups on the table here. And let's start with the games that won't be on IdahoSports.com, and then we'll finish with what's on IdahoSports.com. I did real quick want to give a shout out to the Highland Rams. They went all the way to Meridian and only lost 14-7. Highland has been in my top 5 in the media poll for several weeks now. I can't get anybody else in the state to wake up and realize that this Highland team is really good, especially that defense. They've still got teams like Eagle and Mountain View, and I think Highland's better than those teams. And so
you got a Meridian team that was probably averaging in almost the 30 points, 40 points per game, and to hold them to 14 and be right in that game. I thought that was pretty big too from Highland. I kind of was looking at scores and teams, and I thought it's going to be a tough road for Highland to go up there, especially without Riddle at running back. And man, they came to play. They travel. Highland always travels well. If you ever notice, that's a team that can kind of go anywhere and play, and kind of make you think twice.
Yeah, they're not afraid that we'll play anybody, anytime, anywhere. That's kind of Highland's mantra. So I just wanted to give a shout out to the Rams as well for a great performance, even though it was a loss. So what's on the schedule this week? What are the games that everyone's going to want to keep an eye on? There's a really interesting 3A battle. Teton. We talked about Teton, with the win over American Falls last week. We've been talking for weeks now. Teton had a really good chance to start 5-0. They now play Snake River, a team that's 3-1, the only team to beat South Fremont this year. This is going to be a big non-conference battle to really tell us where Teton stands, because we know Snake River's a good program. They're an established program. Teton, winning like this is kind of new. This has been a program that's been down for a couple of seasons. So this would be a good measuring stick game for the Timberwolves Friday night.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, Snake River is always really good. They're 3-1 right now. And, Teton, you can't sleep on Teton. That's for sure. And I'd like to just kind of see how that pans out, and that kind of gets a better look into that Teton team too.
Yeah, we'll learn a lot about how they handle a pretty good Snake River defense. The other matchup I wanted to highlight, of course, is Skyline at Rigby. Both teams are 4-1 on the year. The defending 4A champs against the defending 5A champs. This was one of the few times Rigby was really tested last year. If you'll remember, it was a close game
in the mini dome.
Yes, it was in Holt Arena on, I think it was a Thursday night in Pocatello. It could have been a Friday night. I can't remember now. But anyways, Skyline really pushed him, and Rigby held on and won. What do you think happens in the rematch here?
I mean, if at the start of the year, I kind of would have said Rigby, I think wins easily. Just kind of how the years went, I feel like Skyline's really just got that balance, like we talked about, and I think it's a really good game. I mean, in fact, I remember the game. Yeah, Rigby won 28-14 last year, but it was closer until the very end, if I'm not mistaken. Like one score happened or something, kind of shifted that whole dynamic of the game. And, we talk a lot about Skyline's offense, but Skyline's got a lot of defense, really good defensive players too. And they're just really solid. And what coaches say is they do what they're supposed to do. Like if this linebacker has a job, he does it, and he does it the best out of anyone on the field. So I like that as far as Skyline being disciplined, and I think it'll be a really good game. I'm not going to pick anyone. I mean, I don't even know where you start to pick. I haven't seen Rigby live this year, but we saw him numerous, ton of times last year, and you can't put anything past Armando, Rigby and his teams. Man, they're always fired up and ready to go, and they'll be fired up Friday.
Definitely. I saw Rigby in the season opener against Coeur d'Alene. A lot's changed for them since then, but man, they've got the battle in the trenches, I think, will be really important, right? Rigby and Skyline both have really strong offensive lines and are kind of replacing guys on the defensive line that were lost to graduation. So the battle up front will be key. And then I think, I assume that Zabe Falavai is going to be covering Kenyon Sadiq a lot on the night. That's going to be a fantastic battle when Skyline has the ball on offense. So I kind of feel like a low scoring game, though, maybe like a 20-14, something like that. But
yeah, I kind of feel like if someone gets a turnover, that could be the game, like an interception, a fumble, a punt gone wrong or something. That could just be the difference. Like it might just be one thing that the coaches can go, hey, I'm glad it happened here and not at playoffs.
Right. Yes, definitely. And then we've got 3 games in East Idaho for you with live video coverage, totally free of charge on IdahoSports.com. East Idaho game night from Ravston Stadium. Idaho Falls will host Century in a non-conference battle. This is a good opportunity for the Tigers to bounce back after that loss in the Emotion Bowl. And for Idaho Falls, they're 1-4 in their first year back in 4A football, and they still have a chance at getting one of those playoff bids that we were talking about, but they're running out of time. And this is a game they got to win, right?
Yeah, for Idaho Falls to make the playoffs, this is a must win. And for Century, I mean, they're looking at every game's an opportunity to get better, and why not this week? You never want to play that team that hasn't won a game. You know what I mean? You don't want to be that team, and that happens every year in NFL, high school. You don't want to be the team that loses the team that hasn't won. I remember Detroit one year, was that team, and yeah, you just don't want to be that team. You don't want to sleep on them, and they'll be ready to go. But that should be a great game to watch in Ravston on the new turf.
Yes, that'll be a fantastic battle. And then we've got 2 editions of Gate City Game Night. That's our Pocatello broadcasts on IdahoSports.com, presented by Lookout Credit Union. The game we're going to be at, Sean, you called it America's Game of the Week earlier. Shelley at Pocatello at Lookout Field. We kind of already broke down that game a little bit. And then the other matchup that we're going to have is out at Iron Horse Stadium. Lauren Jensen will have the call for this one. It's going to be a non-conference battle as Blackfoot takes on Highland, and that should be a pretty interesting battle.
Yeah, I think that's a classic offense versus defense, right? I mean, Highland's got the defense, Blackfoot's got all the skilled players. Who's going to take it? And by the way, I just call whatever game me and you do the America's Game of the Week. But yeah, I think Blackfoot and Highland will be just fantastic. And that one's tough to call too. Highland is a team that you just really, I think, is not getting the love they should, and they're well coached. They just have that defense. Mason Fulmer, they're just all, that defense is tough to deal with. And Blackfoot, they've got the offensive people, but will they be able to break through that Highland wall per se?
Yeah, and one last thing on the media polls, and then we'll finish up with cross country. Blackfoot is a team that hasn't been in my top 5 much this year. Not because I don't think they're good, but because I think 4A is so wide open. You've got Skyline and Sandpoint up north, and Lakeland is off to a really great start, and Bishop Kelly is running roughshod over everybody, and Minico looks strong, and so there just wasn't a spot for Blackfoot in my top 5. But all these voters chastise me every week. How come you're not voting Blackfoot, huh? They got all the way to the semifinals last year, and they're a good team, and they're putting up the results, and they're Blackfoot's getting the benefit of the doubt based on their deep playoff run last year and the players they have coming back. How come Highland isn't getting the same treatment? Highland got all the way to the championship last year. Do people forget that?
And now they're out of the top 5, right? to a lost Meridian. But yeah, and I think it'll be interesting too. You mentioned it when Sandpoint and Lakeland play. I thought Sandpoint is their record is not great right now. It's 1-3, but they've only played 5A teams and then the team at the Rumble from Utah. But I also think Sandpoint is a really good team. They bring back a lot of players from last year, and they had a pretty good run last year. And they're not even in the media poll, but I think that might be just because people look at the record. But they almost beat Lewiston last week, and they barely lost to Homedale, which is Homedale. That's a good team that would compete with anyone. So.
Yeah, it's been a gauntlet of a schedule for Sandpoint. 4A, 2A football are going to be wide open. Those playoffs are going to be fascinating. I've already started to lobby for us to get some of those 4A, 2A games, Sean. So,
well, all right.
So we can have some good competition during the postseason. All right, let's talk about cross country. The Furman invite was held at Boise. That is the largest cross country competition of the season in the state of Idaho. I think it's over at Eagle Island State Park, right? Is that where they hold that at?
Yes, Eagle Island course. People love it. It's I mean, I have not ran it, but
yeah. Nobody looks at me and says,
it. People like it. I don't know whether you could run. No, but I mean, the courses make a big difference. Talking to cross country coaches, it's if the courses, they like the course and how the people set it up and run it, that makes a huge difference. And this is one of the biggest cross country meets in the Northwest. So they just do a really good job. And we had some good competitors up there. I have to shout out one kid from Highland, Cody Christensen. He won the freshman championship. He also plays tennis. But to go up there with 147 high schools and win the freshman championship with a time of 16:44, and that was a PR. I thought that was pretty great. And then also the Highland girls varsity were Division I champs, and there's just a lot. There's a lot of runners up there, but congrats to those guys.
Yeah, that's interesting. Cross country and tennis, mostly those cross country guys just do long distance and track and field in the spring. But
I had no idea he ran cross. I've known him for a long time and had no idea he ran until I saw that. So cool. Super nice kid, great athlete, and congrats to Cody Christensen.
Yes, that state meet is rapidly approaching as well. The fall championship dominoes are starting to fall. Golf next week, and then I think it's swimming, and then cross country, and then soccer, and then volleyball, and then we finally wrap up with the football championships. So it's going to be
football just keeps going and going and going.
Yeah, it's the song that never ends for sure. All right. Well, we did it. We got through another week of competition. And again, if there's a team, if there's an athlete, if there's a story you want us to cover more in depth, reach out to us. You can send me an email, Brandon@IdahoSports.com. Sean and I are both also on Twitter. I'm at Brandon_Baney. Sean, what's your Twitter handle?
At Sean Kane 182. So just put that together right there and put a 182 and you got me. And yeah.
Is that because you're like a Blink 182 fan or?
Yeah, you always had to put a number with something because can you believe it? There's more than one Sean Kane. And I'm a little older and didn't realize, creative name choices back then. So yeah, I did 182. I was a big punk rock guy back in the day.
Yeah, Blink 182. I was a big fan too. I still am. So, yeah. Okay. Well, maybe sometime we can launch a music podcast where we talk about our music interests.
About whiny punk rock from the late 2000s, early 90s.
That's people don't care about this, but before I started working at IdahoSports.com, I worked for 10, 11 years in radio, right? Where I did sports, but I also had to do a morning show and hop on and talk between songs. So I feel like I can hold my own in pretty much any music conversation. I've done pretty much every format there is in music. So
yeah, I would take you to trivia just to do the music where you could read the lyrics and know the band or something. You seem to always know the band. So I'd put you on the trivia team.
Yeah, I'm pretty good at the identifying the artists and songs and all that good stuff. So anyways, all right, well, we'll get out of here. In fact, I'm going to go sing karaoke. No, I'm just kidding. Well,
we're recording that Friday.
Yeah, boy, stay tuned for that. A friendly reminder though, 3 games Friday night on IdahoSports.com. Century at Idaho Falls, Blackfoot at Highland, and the game will be at Sean is Shelley at Pocatello. So enjoy the competition this weekend, everybody, and we'll see you back here next time for another edition of the East Idaho Prepcast on IdahoSports.com.